Okay, perfect. And then Chantel, you can go to the next slide. Perfect. And then you can go to the next one. So like I said, welcome again to the 2027 Virginia Housing Trust Fund Homeless Reduction Grant How to Apply webinar. I have the pleasure of introducing the members of our Homeless and Special Needs Housing Unit. First, we have the Homeless and Special Needs Housing Program Administrator team, led by Will Kerner, who is our program manager. That team is comprised of program administrators Tamia Bright, Ray Obahiro, and Desiree Williams, and Shania Brown, who serves as the program administrator for the Home American Rescue Plan tenant-based rental assistance program. Next, we have the special projects team led by Dr. Darrell Wilburn. That team is comprised of program administrators Kike Oliver, Brianna Green, our youth homelessness coordinator Chantel Higgins, and our HOPWA program administrator Marshika G. And then finally, we have our homeless data team, which is led by Andrea Ukrop, who serves as our homeless data manager, with our homeless and special needs programs analyst, Madalena Eifert. And I'm Ara Mendoza, and I am the Associate Director of our unit. We welcome you all to introduce yourselves in the chat as well, so please include your name, organization, and COC or local planning group you may be a part of. Next slide, please. Before we begin our webinar, we wanted to provide a few housekeeping tips to best help with the flow of the webinar. To start, we're going to ask everyone to mute their microphones. This will just reduce the amount of feedback we will receive during the presentation. Even though we are asking you all to mute at this time, we encourage you to ask questions at any point during the presentation. Feel free to submit your questions using the chat feature during the presentation. There will also be time at the end of the presentation if you wanted to wait until then to ask your questions. Also, if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please let us know in the chat as well. Our team is monitoring the chat, so they will pause the presentation if necessary. After our webinar today, the recorded presentation will be made available on the DHCD website, the DHCD YouTube channel, or a notification will be sent out regarding the location of the recorded presentation. Next slide, please. Thank you. During today's presentation, our team will be providing an overview of DHCD and the Homelessness and Special Needs Housing Unit. We will also provide an overview of the Virginia Housing Trust Fund and the Housing Trust Fund Homeless Reduction Grant. Then we will dig deeper into the specifics of the application, including the application requirements, eligible activities under this opportunity, and then we will also be providing an overview of the steps to complete the application and CAMS. And finally, we'll provide some tips that are focused on the application and important reminders when completing the application. And as I said earlier, we are hopeful that we will have enough time after the formal slides to answer any questions you all have related to this application and funding opportunity. Next slide, please. So just wanted to start with some background of DHCD and the Homelessness and Special Needs Housing Unit. The Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development, DHCD, is committed to creating safe, affordable, and prosperous communities to live, work, and do business in Virginia. The mission of the Homeless and Special Needs Housing Unit is to ensure that homelessness is rare, brief, and one time. The unit administers a continuum of state and federally funded homeless services programs to address housing and stabilization services for individuals and families at risk of or are currently experiencing homelessness in the Commonwealth. The goals of our state-funded programs are to reduce the length of time a household experiences homelessness, reduce the number of new cases of homelessness in the Commonwealth, and then reduce the number of individuals returning to homelessness. Next slide, please. So the HS&H unit administers 4 grant programs, the first being our flagship program, which is the Virginia Homeless Solutions Program, our VHSP program, our Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS or HIV program, our HOPWA program, our Home American Rescue Plan tenant-based rental assistance program, which is our Home ARP TBRA program, and then the Housing Trust Fund Homeless Reduction Grant. This is the funding that is currently available for programs administered through the HS&H unit. For those who have been following the General Assembly session this year, you may have noticed that there was an increase. The first year of the 2-year budget in available funds for the Virginia Housing Trust Fund. DHCD is assessing how adjustments in other sources may impact community-based homeless services projects, funds that may have been made available this year are intended to support communities should there be any gaps in funding in the future. So the funding levels that are detailed for each of the programs on this slide are estimates of the available funds. Depending on the availability of funds and program need, DHCD may modify the funding amounts later this year. Now I'm going to pass it over to Will for their portion of the presentation. Will?
Thanks, Zara. Next slide, please. So I will go into a quick overview of the Virginia Housing Trust Fund. The Virginia Housing Trust Fund is intended to create and preserve affordable housing and to reduce homelessness within the Commonwealth. It is a state appropriation, and at least 80% of Housing Trust Fund must go to loans to reduce cost of home ownership and rental housing. Up to 20% may be used for grants for target efforts to reduce homelessness. Priority consideration will be given to efforts to reduce the number of homeless youth and families. Next slide, please. The Housing Trust Fund Homeless Reduction grant funding will support projects that are or will be a part of a local COC or local planning group's emergency crisis response system. All HS&H funding aims to support the community's emergency crisis response system. An effective emergency crisis response system is able to quickly identify and connect people who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of experiencing homelessness to housing assistance and other services. It works because it aligns the community, its programs, and services around one common goal to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. The goals of an effective crisis response system are to identify those who are experiencing homelessness, prevent homelessness when possible, connect people to housing quickly, and to provide services when needed. Next slide, please. All right, I'm going to quickly go over some requirements of all grantees. Please note that the HS&H guidelines for the Virginia Housing Trust Fund Homeless Reduction Grant that were sent out with this announcement contains a full list of these requirements that goes into much detail than we would be able to provide during this presentation. And I believe that that list begins on page 5 of those guidelines. But I will go over a quick overview here. Grantee requirements are that all grantees have the appropriate level of financial audit. They participate in their COC or local planning group. They have grievance and termination policies, use HMIS or a comparable system, use regular accounting standards, and maintain a conflict of interest policy. Next slide. On more the programmatic side, requirements for grantees are that they maintain a housing first approach, utilize best practices for case management, harm reduction, trauma-informed care, maintain a proof of diversion, ensure equal access, comply with fair housing and civil rights laws, and have prohibition against involuntary family separation. Next slide. All right, quick overview of the Housing Trust Fund Homeless Reduction Grant. The grant opened on August 5th of this month to support rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and underserved population innovation projects. This includes funding requests for HMIS and administrative activities as well. The application will close on September 18th of this year. For applications to be reviewed and evaluated as submitted. Applicants are expected to be notified with an award or denial within 90 days of the application's submission deadline. All applications must be submitted through DHCD's CAMS online application system. And eligible applicants include units of local government, nonprofit organizations, and LLCs. All right, next slide, please. I want to quickly go over a few program updates in this year's Housing Trust Fund program that were not present last year. The first update is that there will be one application for all three project types. When you go into CAMS, you will still have to submit under the appropriate project types. You will have to submit one under rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing, or UPIP, but the applications across those three project types are identical. Another update is the recertification period for financial assistance for rent assistance has been expanded from 3 months to 6 months. For this program, this affects the rapid rehousing project type and the UPIP projects. And finally, one program update we have is that there are new eligible activities under the permanent supportive housing project type. This includes housing stabilization services such as housing search and placement, as well as housing stabilization financial assistance, which includes application fees, moving costs, security utility deposits, utility payments and arrears, and coverage for last month's rent. All right, next slide. All right, I'm going to briefly touch on rapid rehousing. Rapid rehousing is limited to literally homeless households, those who have those who lack fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence, including those residing in shelter or exiting an institution. Rapid rehousing is an intervention designed to help individuals and families quickly exit homelessness and return to permanent housing. Rapid rehousing assistance is offered without preconditions such as employment, income, absence of a criminal record, or sobriety, and the resources and services provided are tailored to the unique needs of the household. You see a list of eligible expense types on the right of the slide, and those fall into one of three categories. Housing identification, from the moment a client receives the rapid rehousing referral, they should be paired with a housing location and navigation assistance to obtain permanent housing. Case management services that are provided throughout the life cycle of a client's participation in rapid rehousing. All assistance and supportive services should be based on the unique needs of the client, including level of assistance and length of case management, but no less than once per month. And then rental or move-in financial assistance, which must be based on the unique needs of the client to include the amount of financial assistance provided and duration of assistance. All right, next slide. And now I'll briefly talk about permanent supportive housing project type. HUD defines chronic homelessness as individuals and families who have been homeless and living or residing in a place not meant for human habitation, a safe haven, or in an emergency shelter continuously for at least 1 year, or on at least 4 separate occasions within the last 3 years that total up to 12 months. Have an adult have head of household or a minor head of household if no adult is present in the household with a diagnosable substance use disorder, serious mental illness, developmental disability, post-traumatic stress disorder, cognitive impairments resulting from a brain injury, or a chronic physical illness or disability. Permanent supportive housing is for chronic homelessness and is an evidence-based housing intervention that combines decent, safe, affordable, community-based housing, non-time limited affordable housing assistance, and wraparound services for individuals experiencing chronic homelessness. Rental assistance under permanent supportive housing is a tenant-based or project-based rental assistance that may be used to enable individuals and families to obtain and remain in permanent supportive housing rental units. Funds must not be used for mortgage assistance. Under tenant-based rental assistance, project participants select any appropriate size unit within the COC or local planning group's geographic service areas. And if a client chooses to be relocated outside of the geographic area, please contact us for any additional assistance on that. All right, and I think that's everything I have for permanent supportive housing. With that, I will pass it over.
Thanks, Will. So for the 2027 Housing Trust Fund grant year, applications for the Underserved Populations Innovations Projects, our UPIP projects, will only be available for currently funded projects as renewal opportunities. While we understand this may be disappointing for organizations seeking new funding, our team is actively evaluating our programs and developing strategies to strengthen our funding approach and better support the needs of your communities in the future. So we're just taking a bit of time to review the UPIP program design, and then we'll be back and let folks know when those opportunities will be available for new projects again. The projects are focused on historically underserved communities who have a lack of resources that are targeted towards providing culturally appropriate and trauma-informed services. Projects serving monolithic groups based on race, color, national origin, or religious ideologies will not be permitted for the use of Housing Trust Fund Homeless Reduction Grant funding. And then I believe that I'm passing this back over to Will.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm going to quickly go over the HSH pre-approval process. Expenses such as limited supportive services and those designed as other require pre-approval from DHCD prior to utilizing HSH funding. For pre-approval, please email your program administrator prior to incurring the expense. The program administrator will review the request. They may need further clarification for approval or denial. You may receive an email approving or denying the request from the program administrator. Upon approval, you may move forward with the activity or expense. Include information that there was a pre-approval in the notes section of your CAMS remittance submission. Please note that pre-approvals for HSH funds are granted for current grant period. Approvals do not automatically roll over into the next fiscal year. Next slide, please. Data requirement and objectives. An end of year report will be required and submitted in CAMS. All projects will be evaluated on how well they are achieving the following key outcomes and objectives. Reducing the length of time homeless, ability to obtain and maintain permanent housing, and ability to remain stably housed. All reports will be available via HMIS COC APR. For any questions regarding reporting, please contact Madeline Eifert.
Good morning, everyone. I am Desiree Williams, and I'm going to be your point of contact for all application questions. So we'll briefly go over how to access the application. But first, I just want to make sure that all potential applicants are reading the guidelines and application instructions prior to working on the application. And just to reiterate, please make sure that you read the guidelines prior to accessing the application. You do want to make sure that your project is eligible and you as the potential applicant are meeting all DHCD requirements. So first, to access the application, you will go to the DHCD website at www.dhcd.virginia.gov. You will access the application in the upper right-hand corner, select Applications and Programs, then Apply, and then select the Housing Trust Fund Homeless Reduction Grant Pool for 2027, and then any appropriate project type that you are applying for. Select Go, and then Apply. Next slide, please. Just a few CAMS tips. You must be registered in CAMS prior to an application being started. Multiple users can work on, edit, and review application materials. Applicants may return repeatedly to CAMS to work on an application. We would just recommend that you save your applications as you are working on it, because after 55 minutes of inactivity, the user will be logged out of CAMS. The application will save as incomplete, and then when the application is submitted, it will change from that incomplete status to pending. Another reminder is to make sure that you are using Google Chrome. Again, save your work frequently and do not include external tables or external links. Next slide, please. Here are some of the required and optional attachments. Just to go over a few, the certifications and assurances form, which will be provided by dhcd in CAMS. Applicant financials, current and prior year organizational budgets to include revenue sources and expenses. Your letter of support, which is requested that it is signed by the COC or local planning group board chair, and they provide a letter of support to state that they support the project that is seeking funds through this grant opportunity. Your homeless services flow chart approved by the COC or LPG. Job descriptions for all projects proposing staff costs. Board of directors for nonprofit applicants. And then your new attachments are going to be your housing first policy, your grievance and termination policy, internal controls, and separation of duties. And then any optional attachments would be those graphs and tables that we were talking about, again, because we can't access them through the application. So if you do want to upload them, they can be uploaded to this section. And then it will be a requirement if your project is proposing to have any sub-grantees or partners within the application, that an MOU is required to be provided. If they're not going to be a partner in the project, then you do not have to include an MOU. Next slide, please. The application is made up of 4 components. 15% of the score will be based on part 1 of the Homeless and Special Needs Housing 2024 through 2026 application, which is based on community level need outcomes and the community's response to homelessness. To detail the need, the grantee will be asked to make the case for funding for their proposed project using homelessness data. Please use data that already exists, such as HMIS, VA data, point in time count, etc. They all have a wealth of information that would benefit the application. Next would be your approach. This considers the details of the proposed project, whether it is aligned with state goals and meets grant guidelines and expectations, how the proposed project fits into the community's crisis response system, and the expected outcomes of the proposed project. Local coordination is partly based on the letter of support submitted by the COC or local planning group board chair. Response to how the proposed project is informed by the community strategic plan and addresses an unmet community need, and whether or not community stakeholders were engaged in the development of this project. And then for capacity, reviewers are asked to consider how well the agency implements a housing first approach and their history managing state and federal funding. Next slide, please. All right, application tips. Please be clear, concise, and answer all components of the question. Please do your best to keep your answers to a maximum of 500 words. Please read the guidelines and applications instructions prior to accessing the application. Make sure all components of each question are addressed in your response. Ensure that the proposed project is intended to meet its goals. Clearly define the activities that are being funded, the targeted population, and the staffing necessary to provide the services that are being described. The need for this funding and the proposed project must be clearly supported by community and agency level data and include data pulled from HMIS or comparable systems, the PIC count, and other relevant sources. Just as a reminder, there will be one set of questions for each application, but we do want to let you know that you still have to submit one application for PSH, rapid rehousing, and UPIP. So all of the questions will look the same for each project. That is something that changed this year, but don't be alarmed when you go in and see those same set of questions. All right, and then next slide, please. Again, thank you all for joining us. This is my contact information. Again, I will serve as the point of contact for this application. So if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me prior to the application deadline. Do not wait until the last minute to ask your questions. I'm here to help you and assist you in any way I can. And now we'll take any questions or concerns that you all may have.
Shani, are there any questions in the chat that you see?
One just popped up. The question is the Housing First policy supposed to be uploaded under proposed program policies and procedures?
Yes, yes. Copies of the policies and procedures that apply to the program that is applying for funding, and that should include any relevant Housing First policies.
Okay, there's another question that came up. Not sure I heard correctly, but did you mention a character limit for each narrative?
Not necessarily a character limit, but a word count limit. We are hopeful that potential applicants would be able to concisely respond to the questions within 500 words. That's what we've seen as a best practice across some of our other applications. At this time, there is no character limit in CAMS, but we are asking that applicants consider this when they're completing their applications.
Another question, confirming this is for existing programs only. If so, is there another one that will be eligible for new programs?
So I could take this. So only under the Underserved Populations Innovations projects will we be completing a renewal review. For if like an applicant is intending to apply for a new PSH program or a new rapid rehousing program, they would just follow the same path that they would for a new application, if that makes sense.
So you're saying we can apply then? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes, in more concise terms, yes, you may apply for a new rapid rehousing or PSH project. But in terms of the UPIP projects, we're only considering renewals at this time.
Okay.
I have a question. Under the internal controls and separation of duties, policies and procedures, we have that built into our financial policies already. Are you guys looking for something broader or different?
Whatever you have that's already covered in your financial policies is fine. Just include that as the attachment for that section.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
We have a question in the chat. How should the description of each major budget line and its purpose within the narrative differ from the budget narrative?
Molly, so the budget narrative is a little bit more high level. They're more related to specific activities. The description of each major budget line, like that first question would expand on, those items a little bit more. So, you may say, we're trying to support 3 FTEs in your budget narrative, but then in like the description in your project, you may say, we are proposing to support 3 like case managers who will be working on X items that are related to the project. Does that make sense? And if you have other questions about like guidance for specific questions, please feel free to send them also to Desiree, and then we'll help you with that technical assistance as well.
We have another question in the chat. Last go around we applied. This is from Mindy. Last time we applied as a RRH and UPIP. Will we apply this go around as a UPIP renewal or continue as rapid rehousing with UPIP?
Mindy, am I understanding that like you applied for a UPIP project and rapid rehousing was a component of that UPIP project? Or that they were separate when you applied last year?
They were like a combo. We applied
Okay.
as a rapid with underserved population component. So I'm just wondering if we would be considered a renewal project or just stay the course and apply as a rapid rehousing again with underserved population.
Um, if you applied under rapid rehousing, I would say apply as that as well for this year.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
We have another question in the, oh, I see that Ara's already taking care of it. Awesome.
Yeah, sorry, Shani. I'm like also trying to grab questions that we can answer in writing.
Another question, this is from Lane. Could you clarify your expectations for the new attachments? I caught the housing policy first policy, internal controls, and separation of duties. Was there a fourth? And does separation of duties mean you're wanting us to detail what each team member is responsible for?
We may be able to go back a few slides that will list the required documents. We're also going to send this PowerPoint out after our presentation so that you all can refer back to it, but this may be a good start so that you can see. And then let me see if I can understand.
Um, just to answer, from the list you provided, there was missing the grievance and termination policy. So those are the four new ones. And I believe Laura answered it. Separation of duties is specific among finance staff and how duties at that level are delineated, not at the program level. Thank you, Laura.
There's another question in the chat. Our model is for chronically homeless and those with disabilities for individuals only. Does the individuals only cause a problem?
So Catherine, you may want to talk with our team and maybe schedule like a 30-minute call about your program's design to make sure that you're on the right track, because we may have specific questions about how other eligible households would be receiving services in your community. But yeah, I would recommend scheduling something separate. And if you can just drop an email with Desiree to schedule something, that would be great. And then Desiree will determine whether it's appropriate to bring in Will or myself for further guidance.
Okay, yeah, thank you. We're part of a national model, and that is how we operate. We feel like the people that have been chronically homeless are in a trauma state, and the original developer of our program was separating people, sending them to motels because there was fights and a lot of problems. So our model is for individuals only. But yeah,
Thank you.
I'll reach out to Desiree.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you for that additional detail. But yeah, I would still say that that way you can get a little bit more technical assistance on how your program's design may fit into this funding opportunity if it does fit.
Thank you.
Right, we have about 20 minutes left. We'll still be around to answer any additional questions, but we, again, just wanted to thank everyone for your time and joining us for the webinar today. I know that everyone's incredibly busy, so we really appreciate you spending your morning with us. And then, yeah, we'll be around if there are any additional questions that may come up. But thank you all for joining us.
I have another question. We also only serve individuals, as we have another grant that does families and permanent supportive housing. Should I also request a meeting? This is from Nikki Smith.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Shani. I would recommend scheduling a separate meeting, or at least reaching out by email so that you can get the proper guidance.
Thank you.
Will, I think you can stop the recording now.